let's talk about that last scene. I think he does a really nice job with it. Disturbing? Yeah, okay. Trista, why disturbing?
Because it was like, I heard the sound effects when he was doing that. I was like, yeah.
So the reality of the fact, he does commit suicide here at the end. And what does the audience do? Why is that so horrifying to us? Because we as the audience know that it's real, it's not fake.
Well, because they're applauding someone taking their life for honor over man. Like, it just reiterates that whole stereotype that these Oriental women are willing and able to give their life for their man.
Okay, yeah. So do you think the people who put on this demonstration, with that very real, as Trista said, it is very disconcerting, and especially with the cinematography having the blood drops at the end to make sure we know he really does kill himself. Everyone else clapping, and even the guards looking on and smiling and nodding. Why give us that macabre ending? Make it so macabre and just so over the top with the blood and the clapping.
Maybe because the whole idea is over the top. I mean, the fact that we believe these things and want them to be this way, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. Well, think about the ending of Madame Butterfly. This is the ending of Madame Butterfly, right? And also the ending of M. Butterfly. And what happens every time Madame Butterfly ends?
She does.
She dies, and the audience
Applauds.
Okay, yeah.
And previously, we would look at this and say, well, we're applauding the performance. We're not applauding the action.
Right.
But now we are looking at this as what we're actually doing is applauding the fact that someone has just taken their own life.
Right, we're applauding, and not only that they've taken their own life, but they've
But
taken it
for
based on a stereotype.
Right, what are the circumstances
Based on
surrounding it?
Orientalism and a false conception of what the East is, right? A very Western view. So he sort of turns it around on us here at the end. Okay. Notice the prologue to his suicide. He tells us one more time his vision of the Orient. And then he says, I am Madame Butterfly. Okay. Why do you think Huang makes him the butterfly in the end, turns him into the butterfly? And why, I guess, does Gallimard suddenly believe he's the butterfly instead?
He's the one that actually fell in love with God. I guess because she was sort of punished for loving man, he's kind of punished for loving the man.
Yeah, definitely.
In this case, he's the one that's been left hanging. He's the one wriggling. He's the one who's been played and has been left behind. Good. I think there are a couple of different reasons here.
Well, he's willing to die, with honor, than to live in dishonor, and the fact that
That he was
He was
homosexual, right, with a man.
Yeah.
And could it also be that there was never a song? It was always a fantasy in his head?
That's what I was going to say. Like, it was
him the whole time.
I was like a psycho moment. He was the mother too.
Oh,
Yeah, I think all love starts out to be a fantasy, but then you get to know the person. I don't say a fantasy can last for
20 years?
20 years.
If it's an ingrained fantasy. And remember, this is based on a true story. I put a link up on your e-learning to the New York Times article about the true story. Amberly, you look very... Sorry. That's okay.
I'm sure it's possible, but it's just hard for 20 years to
There are
love.
people in asylums that would beg to get.
That's true.
Yes.
Well, and I think it just goes to how rooted these stereotypes and assumptions can be.
And how if you want something to be something so bad,
Right.
I mean,
You'll do anything to
Yeah.
preserve the illusion, right? And that's one theme here is reality versus, you could say illusion or perhaps even delusion.
yeah.
Kathy?
Yes, we brought up the point whether or not this was even a reality. Did this even exist? And in the very early pages, we're reading about, he's looking at the girl magazines and he is seeing what she's saying. In other words, she is coming alive off of that magazine page, which lends itself to perhaps he went to the theater and saw this beautiful woman and created a parallel existence.
It created
I
the
can
truth for him.
Absolutely, and I can completely believe that it was 20 years and just in his mind.
Yeah, like he could be gay without being gay. Without
We
fully
haven't-
being.
Right, we haven't brought that up yet either. Do we think that Gallimard is homosexual?
Yes.
It's a really hard question to
That's
answer,
an
isn't
excellent
it?
question.
Well, since
I
he's
totally
not,
do.
Okay, Amberly, why?
Again, it's because the illusion thing, because he could finally have an excuse. Like in the end, it's like, I didn't know, even though 20 years in, I mean, you got something. And to,
and
Okay,
his,
you can only
and
be
his
so
relationship
blind
with his
if
wife
that's-
was kind of,
okay.
had nothing, no relation with his wife really whatsoever.
Well, he had a relationship with his wife, but he was more in love with the fantasy, right? Jill, what's your take on it?
I think just like she thinks that it finally he had kind of like, you know how when people get drunk they lose their inhibitions and they do things that they wouldn't. Well, this gave him an inhibition. Like this was his being drunk moment where he could fulfill this fantasy in a way that wouldn't make him.
I see. So the fantasy was a mask for his.
Yes.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
could like
that's
put
one
that
way to do it.
on the guy and be like, okay, you're lying to me, so I don't know that you're a man. When in reality, it's in his head. He's saying it. It's like a,
It also brings up the question of what is homosexuality, right?
Well, and we're talking about gender and sexuality
it's too
and
convoluted.
it's so
very
convoluted
yeah.
because, okay, he goes to the theater, he finds out that she's stunning, she meets all of his fantasies. Okay, and then, yes, even though we don't know this for certain, at some point he finds out that he's a man. Okay, but that he's got, not only is it he's got to justify the original attraction, I don't know that
Well, as long as
necessarily he's gay.
He says though that if she would continue to play the part, that he would be okay with
It's
it.
like when he saw him.
But it's not okay. Like he's okay with it, not because Song is a man, but because that would fulfill the fantasy. I don't feel like it has anything to do with the fact that Song is a man or a woman. It's just
That's,
all about
it's all about the
butterfly.
So maybe
fantasy.
he's bisexual?
I
Or
didn't
is
know
this even a
that.
part
I just,
of it?
No.
I just feel like it's
It's
all
the
this
fantasy.
fantasy. Like anything to
Yeah.
fulfill this butterfly dream.
I think when he sees him as a man, it was like his sober moment.
Yeah.
And that's why he's like, no, I don't think he hated the fact that he was a dude.
Well, for me, it comes back down to that definition of what is a homosexual. Is it someone who is attracted to a man? Because is he attracted to a man?
He's
When
attracted to
a woman.
He's
Right.
attracted to the
But the
woman.
physical act is homoerotic.
Yeah.
So
Right.
can he split, what he's trying to do is split the homoeroticism from his attraction.
Right.
And so I think that's what makes this such a vexed question.
Yeah.
How do
It
we,
could-
is he or
could-
is he not? I guess if you wanted to define it, yes, by virtue of having performed this act, he could be labeled a homosexual, but by virtue of his own fantasy, it's
And
very much
because-
heterosexual and also very masculine. in
Okay,
his
I have a
heterosexuality.
question. Within those 20 years, could he eventually love Song in the true sense? Could you get to know the person eventually?
But he's
That's
not
a good
getting
question.
to know a
Right.
person.
Okay, Amberly, yeah, go ahead.
He's not getting to know a person. He's getting to know an idea.
A character.
Like he will
Character.
never want to know Song. He
Was
just
Song,
knows
yeah, was Song ever himself, or was Song
No.
always an act?
Always
Song's
an act.
always an act.
Even if Song was himself, he made Song an act.
Good, good.
Even
His
Song
own
completely-
projections made Song
I mean,
an act.
like clearly in like the parts when she's like, what, like, you just like this because you're a Westerner, like, even when she like blatantly is saying that this play is crap, he still is like, oh my God, she's the butterfly, she's beautiful.
Just go
because-
back and put
she's
your
so
makeup
perfect.
on
Yeah, exactly, like,
and,
it doesn't even matter that you have a mind.
right.
So that's one final question then about the play and his relationship with Song. We only see Song through his own mind. So this play is essentially the breakdown of his character as he's coming to terms with reality over his fantasy. He's realizing he's deluded himself the whole time. And it's only in that very last scene where reality finally strips Song naked that you can see what's happened. So this whole play is a projection of Song. The whole play is another fantasy. In a sense. I know, that just makes your head more.
It really does, because, you know,